It will require a constitutional amendment in the General Assembly. So the question, Mark, to gerrymander or not to gerrymander? It's going to be a big fight. That's the question, right?
Well, I think the answer is gerrymandering is wrong. But the question is, how do we stop gerrymandering? And my concern is that the actual amendment that was proposed, which is not the amendment that the groups fighting gerrymandering proposed. It's a different amendment. It's one that the Republicans substituted in about 20 minutes before we voted on it last year. I fear it will make the situation worse. It will lead to the worst gerrymander Virginia's ever had. So what the amendment says is basically the Virginia Supreme Court decides the issue. Now, you may hear people say, no, Mark, no, the commission decides the issue. Well, I guess it's possible the commission will decide the issue. But all it takes is two people to dissent. Let's say Todd Gilbert and Kirk Cox, or you could say Eileen Fuller-Court and Dick Saslaw. It takes only two members to dissent, and the commission dies. And there's nothing the commission can do. Even though there's 16 people on the commission, if just two, actually two of the same chamber, I shouldn't say Eileen and Dick, I should say Eileen and Charnel. If two members dissent, the whole thing dies. And when the whole thing dies, then it goes before the Virginia Supreme Court. I think there's a very strong chance the Virginia Supreme Court will draw the districts. So you might say, well, what's wrong with the Virginia Supreme Court? Courts draw districts all the time. Virginia is one of only two states in the United States where the legislature chooses the court. So all those other states that have their court do it, whether it's Florida or Michigan or Iowa, all of them have judges that are either chosen by the governor, which is elected by the people, or chosen directly by the people. We're one of only two states where the legislature chooses the judges. And normally I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I get to focus on Alexander, Arlington, Fairfax judges. That's all cool. But the Supreme Court, each of these people have 12-year terms. Every one of the 7 members of the Virginia Supreme Court were appointed by the illegally, racially gerrymandered Republican legislature of 2011. Every single one. And they have 12-year terms. It's not like we're going to change more than maybe one seat over the next 2 years. So what could happen is, because when you gerrymander, you're basically controlling, the voters aren't controlling the district. The map drawer controls who's.
It's been a huge issue.
Right.
We've talked about
so all the Virginia Supreme Court has to do is, first the commission happens, and let's say they insist on a strongly Republican gerrymander. And they say, if we don't get that, the two of us, Kirk Cox and Todd Gilbert, the leaders of the Republicans in the House of Delegates, we won't agree to it. So they kill the commission. It goes before the Virginia Supreme Court. The Virginia Supreme Court can draw strongly Republican gerrymander districts. And you know who can stop them? No one. It would be in the Constitution of Virginia. There'd be no way to stop them. The governor, elected by the people, would have no role. Even the General Assembly, chosen recently by a majority Democrats, would have no say. And it could well be that we have 2 years of a blue majority, a Democratic majority, and then for the next century, it's all red, it's all Republican. And so I tell people, call me cynical, but don't call me Cassandra. So Cassandra, you may know, for those of you who don't remember your Greek mythology, Cassandra was the person who always was fated to tell the truth. She'd give these dire predictions, and no one would believe her, and then they'd come true. And so you should listen to Cassandra. So
before we freak out, because I'm sure people
there is a better way to do it.
So
and I'm not wedded to my particular method. There are lots of different methods. There's the Iowa method, there's the California method. We could have this commission and not have it go to the Virginia Supreme Court. I'm fine with that. Get rid of the Virginia Supreme Court, let the commission decide the boundaries. I'm fine with that.
So real quick, what's the timetable on this?
So for the constitutional amendment, it would have to be passed this year to get in the Virginia Constitution, then the people would vote on it. But we don't have to do this by constitutional amendment. For the last 200 years, it's all been done by a law. We can pass a law, get it done right, and then we have 10 years to figure out exactly how it should be in the Constitution. So there are different ways to undo a gerrymander. My favorite is called the efficiency gap, and it's a little complex and it's a little geeky, but that's because it's hard to draw fair lines. This actually relies on computers and statistics. It takes all the human element out of it. No legislature draws the district, no court, not even the government.
Wait, so you're proposing electeds can't pick their own voters?
That's right.
Oh my God, Mark.
I'm proposing that no one can manipulate the system. And this model, which I did not design, it's a complex social science model, was brought before the United States Supreme Court in the case challenging the Wisconsin and Maryland gerrymanders. And at the time, Justice Kennedy said, I hate gerrymandering, but I can't figure out how to argue. How do you know the district is too wrong? So they said, well, here is a scientific way to do it. And what they do is, it's a little complex, but they look at what's called wasted votes. So when you gerrymander, you do cracking and packing. You try to pack your opponents all into one district and crack up their cities so that a Republican gerrymander would have districts that are 98% Democratic and then several that are 60% Republican. And that's how you take a majority and make it into a minority. So when you do that, the wasted votes for Democrats is quite high. In that context, you take the 40% of Democrats that don't get their way, multiply it times several districts, you have a whole lot of unhappy Democrats and very few unhappy Republicans.
And that's how traditionally it's been done.
That's right. And it's done the other way in Maryland. It's done the other way in Maryland. The Democrats, you have happy Democrats, unhappy Republicans. The wasted vote system equalizes the unhappiness. It actually, you draw random districts and statistically equalizes the unhappiness. And then to be exactly right, what you should do is not make it 50-50, but I would say it's based on the most recent governor election where it was, I think, 54-46 for Democrats. And so you actually, the goal, after all, is to have the districts match the polity, match the people in the districts. To me, the problem with gerrymandering, it's critical people understand this, It's not that districts are funky looking. It's like, yeah, look at that terrible district. It's really funky looking. It goes, it winds its way. I don't love districts that are funky looking, but that's not what makes gerrymandering wrong. What makes gerrymandering wrong is it's fundamentally undemocratic, small d. It's unrepresentative democracy.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it wrong. You don't want a state like Wisconsin where the people regularly vote majority for the Democrats and yet the Republicans control the legislature. Same is true in Florida, Michigan, and so forth. So if you use a computer to make the districts map the people, then it is representative democracy. So that's my favorite plan.
So let me put on the contrarian view.
Sure.
By the way, I agree with everything you're saying. It should be fair. It should be absolutely based upon statistics as best as you can make them. But you'll have people say, well, the Republicans did it for decades in Virginia.
Right.
Why shouldn't the Democrats then retaliate? And
well, there are people that say that. I've even got constituent letters for that effect. And there's a certain pleasure in that idea. I'm not going to deny it. I am a Democrat. And that is how it was done. But I think to set a real standard of fairness, it's hard. I guess Michelle Obama is saying when they go low, we go high. Right now, though, the issue is between this constitutional amendment, which is pro-Republican, and my proposal, which is neutral. I haven't really heard any Democrats argue for a Democratic gerrymander. I got some constituents who told me they want one. But one thing to remember about the Virginia Supreme Court, that was chosen by the Republican legislature, which even the United States Supreme Court, and they're not a bunch of liberals, found was illegally racially gerrymandered, a violation of the Voting Rights Act. This dead hand of the Republicans, dating back to 2011, could control our government forever. Because when you think about it, if you're on the Supreme Court and you want to be reelected, you want to keep your seat, and you're a Republican, you know that a Republican legislature is going to reelect you. So you have an incentive to keep your own job to gerrymander it in favor of Republicans. No. Currently on the Virginia Supreme Court is a former Republican delegate, the sister of a current Republican senator, and the right-hand guy of Ken Cuccinelli. The last two, by the way, were during my time. So there are people who say, but Mark, wouldn't it be great if all judges were fair? It would be great.
Yeah,
and I used to believe more in fair judges.
That's not the world anymore.
Well, after Bush v. Gore, after Trump is putting all these judges on the court, Roy Cohn, who was worked for Joe McCarthy and was Donald Trump's mentor, once said, I won't say this word on air, F the facts, who are the judges? And I wish it weren't that way. And I'm not saying that all judges are corrupt or even all judges on the Virginia Supreme Court are corrupt. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the people should have a right to choose their representatives. And we could have a situation where the legislature chooses the judges choose the legislature chooses the judges choose the legislature. Yeah. There'd be no way to stop them. The governor couldn't stop them, and we couldn't even amend the Constitution again.
And the voters have no say.
They have no say because to amend the Constitution requires the legislature. Right. So this is a really bad amendment. Well, I think we're better with no amendment than this amendment. With no law whatsoever than this law. Now, I do have my own, I don't have to have the efficiency gap, that's my choice. There are other ways to deal with this. But this amendment is bad news wrapped in a pretty package. And what you'll find, so I went out on election day. I go to every one of my 23 precincts on election day. That's my election tradition. And I was there, and the grassroots organization, One Virginia 2021, was there. And they would go up to people, and I saw them. They're sitting right next to me as I'm saying hello to voters. And they say, are you against gerrymandering? People said, yes, I oppose gerrymandering. Great, sign here. And what people were signing was a petition to me, as their delegate, to say, support the constitutional amendment that lets the Virginia Supreme Court, controlled by the illegal Republican gerrymander, right? But they didn't tell the people who signed the petition that. The people who signed the petition just said, I hate gerrymandering. Yeah. They didn't say, I love this particular constitutional amendment. So I'm trying to sound the alarm. I'm trying to let people know this is not the way to go. And this wasn't One Virginia 2021's proposal. This was a proposal put in by Republicans at the last minute. They gave us 20 minutes to vote on it. And we knew we'd get a second chance to vote on it. And I've had a chance to study it over the last year, and I really think it's the wrong choice in Virginia.
So we've given folks a high level. Where can they go to get more info, more details?
So I'm actually going to debate one-on-one, mano a mano. Want to see some fireworks?
Love it.
I like Brian Kennedy. It's not personal. I just think he's wrong about this. He's the director of One Virginia 2021. We're going to meet in Arlington on December 11th at Marymount University. The information will be on my website, markfordelegate.com, MARKFOR delegate.com. And people can come and watch us and decide for themselves. You've heard one side here. Yep. You got to hear Brian Kennedy's view. He strongly disagrees with me. And again, it's not personal. I do think he's wrong, but it's not personal. And hear both sides of the debate. I fear that so many advocates really want to do something about gerrymandering, fought hard to do something, and now they're like, well, this is the only train leaving the station. We have to do this or we've done nothing. Right. This is not the only train leaving the station. Better to get it done right than to just do something just to do something.
We have one shot at this. So let's do it right. Let's get all the information to all the folks. Now, how can folks obviously lobby their representatives, their delegates?
They need to write their delegates, write their senators, and say, I oppose gerrymandering, but the constitutional amendment is the wrong way to go. I don't trust the Virginia Supreme Court. We need a better way.
Awesome. Mark, thanks for starting us off.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming back. Man, way to set the bar. Folks,